Good morning. We're trying something new here, and bear with us because we're kind of amateurs. But this is the Indian room that I talk about all the time on the radio and in some of my stories. And these are the people that have created the stories. I bought these porcelain Indians several years ago, and I decided that I looked at them one day and I thought, oh, this represents a big part of my early Indians that we're aware of, and that would represent my great-grandpa by Bertha Lilburn Cahill, and this would be his wife, Nancy, and she was French-Canadian, and there's a story behind her and getting down here, but I'll tell you, you have to come and listen to that. The breadboard, it was made by him for her, and that is actually an heirloom we've kept in the family all these years. And then this represents just some of the children, but it was the ones that I had stories about, not the only porcelains I had. So this was their son Cap. This was Emily back here, and then right here was Mary, and I'm actually named after her. She's and she's the one that there's a lot of stories about her. This is the quilt she made after she was grown. This would have represented her as a child. This is a picture of her. And I'll tell you more about that if you come here. But anyway, it's interesting. And I'm going to read a story today about this quilt. And I hope I can get it all the way I want it. But I want to walk into the store part just for a moment. Just kind of give them a shot of all the way around the room. We've got a lot of Indian artifacts in here. A lot of them have been given to us because everybody kind of feels bad about what we did to the Indians, and I think it makes them feel better to bring something and put it in this room. So we've got quite a few things collected, and we'll hope to have more. And eventually we will have movies in here every day if this pandemic ever gets over with. But anyway, yeah, we're set up for it. But we'll have a TV sitting right over there. We'll, yeah, you can see all the pictures. A lot of them are awesome pictures. And over here, if you can get just back in behind here a little bit, you'll see that's me and my Uncle Johnny right here. That's back when I was a cowgirl, rode in horse shows. That picture back there is of Bill and myself at the King's Ball in St. Genevieve. Back there it talks about the river roars. Calico Island clan boated back and forth across the Mississippi as part of everyday life. And that's my mother to the left, my Aunt Alice to the right. She was my Uncle Pete's wife, so she really, I don't know that she had native blood. But anyway, and there's just all kinds of pictures and stuff on all these shelves. It's kind of interesting to come and see them. Got a whole collection of Indian women down on this next shelf. Now we'll step over here into the store part. And I'll show you a little, it extends kind of in here a little. I don't tear the store down here, getting in. Yeah. This is part of what we call the book room of the store. If you get back right over here, maybe you can get a shot of that, or can you get it from there? This is a picture of me. One of my friends kind of gave me the name Minnie Pearl of the Ozarks, and so I'm not like M-I-N-N, I am M-A-N-Y, Minnie Pearls of the Ozark. And these are my CDs. Most of the stories that I have written, a big part of them are on here. This is me and my sister when she was little and when we were older. Then up here is my Uncle Pete. And then it's the old drinking cup from World War I that my uncle brought home from the war. This is the one that tells about the quilt and some of the stories about it. And then that's supposed to be my Minnie Pearl of the Ozarks picture. So now we'll go back into the Indian room and I'll read the story. This is the thing I take to the radio station every Friday. This goes with me, and that's my story that I'm going to read. This one is called Great Grandma's Indian Quilt. I remember as a child, once a week, we always visited my Granny Margaret. Granny Margaret was my mama's mother. She lived in Crystal City, Missouri. Occasionally while visiting Granny, my mama would ask her to show us the quilt. That was like an event. It was one of Granny's prized possessions. She would take us back to her bedroom where she kept this family heirloom. Then she and Mama would carefully spread it across Granny's bed. We would all just stand back and admire the handiwork of Mary Cahill Bettis. She was my Granny's Margary's mother, a doctor of natural medicine, self-taught, and lived on Calico Island across the river from Crystal City, Missouri. She and her husband, Isaac, were Native Americans and French. She designed this quilt with the spoke-type blocks and a vine of Indian symbols. You can see the Indian symbols go all the way around, and they're all attached to this vine, and we really don't know the actual story, but we assume it was like a lifeline. You know, that was what kept, you know, that's what they used for, there's a turkey's foot, a hide, a plant, leaf, and then the spokes are the same as that of the Cherokee Council. I don't know that that's what it, you know, I don't know that. We've had just, all the fabric is dyed with natural plants. They could tell that when I entered it in this quilt contest a long time ago. But one day when Mama asked to see the quilt, we followed the same procedure as usual. But when Granny folded it up, she turned and handed it to my mom. She told her, Muriel, she actually didn't, she called her Merle, they all called her Merle. You and your family admire this quilt the most, and I know you will always take good care of it. I would do the same ritual with my children while viewing the quilt at my mama's house. It became we just transferred that to my mom's house, and I do the same thing. One day, Mom handed me the quilt with the same message. I had not had the quilt long when I heard of a historic quilt contest sponsored by Silver Dollar City in Branson. If your quilt was accepted as a special historic quilt, a picture and the history of the quilt would be forever remembered in a book, and that book's somewhere. It's right over there on that thing, but that you don't have to do that. Over there on that other case. I chose to enter at St. Genevieve, the place where there were different places that were sponsoring this. I went to that because that was a county I live in. If the quilt was chosen, it would be gone for several months to tour the entire state of Missouri at different locations. Let me tell you, my mom and her sisters were not real thrilled about that. We're very concerned that something might happen to it when it left our hands. But I just felt like it would win, and I felt somehow I had my great-grandma's and Granny's approval. The day of announcing the winner came. Great-grandma's quilt was accepted. It was given a title called Indian Symbols. It was the only quilt in the entire contest of Indian design. When it was on display at the Hallmark Center in Kansas City, Missouri, my mama, my sister, and I traveled across the state to see it. It still thrills me to remember what it was like when we were riding down the escalator and I got our first view of that quilt on display. It still brings tears to my eyes to remember that moment. Knowing the creative artwork of cloth made by this simplistic woman who probably hadn't traveled more than 50 miles from her birthplace her entire life of 80 years, hung for all to see. There her quilt hung for the whole world to see. The research by the historic quilt experts confirmed she had dyed her own cloth using bark in colors of gold, red, and green, appliqued on a background kind of off-white. They said that her quilt was probably pieced in the 1870s and quilted in the 1890s. We had a house fire in our home in 1988. The first thing my daughter, Vicki, the artist, carried out was the quilt. The house didn't burn, but it gave me great pleasure to know my daughter's respect for her great-great-grandma's artwork in cloth. I was named after Mary Cahill Bettis. My thirst for the knowledge of herbs was handed down from my great-grandma on to my grandma and to my Uncle Johnny. They're the ones that taught me about the herbs. I'm grateful to be able to help people remember she walked on this earth, served mankind with her natural medicine. I pray when my work on earth is over, I will also be remembered for helping others with God's medicine. And this quilt is always on display. If you'll turn around and show them the case it's in usually. Just turn around. It's usually inside that gun. That was my dad's gun cabinet. So there's all kinds of memories in this room. And it hangs in there and on display. And also my grandma, let me do this here once. Yeah, that's the book the quilt's in. This is Granny Margery. This is Grandma Cahill's daughter. And anyway, I have a pistol too that she slept with underneath her pillow every night. But you got to come to Earth Mother in the Indian room to hear that story. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the little tour. I'm going to try to get better as I go, but I'm really not a performer. Well, sort of, kind of. So we'll see you next time.